Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Three Principles Global Community webinar. 3PGC, or the Three Principles Global Community, is a nonprofit organization that's committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles to people throughout the world. You can learn more about 3PGC at 3pgc.org. And today we have Sandra Krot with us. Sandy's vision is to make the workplace a setting for creative performance, as well as the elevation of the human spirit. She's a pioneer in translating a principled understanding of human thought to leadership and organizational effectiveness. She's a graduate of Bates College and the University of New Haven. The early years of her career were dedicated to counseling and human development. Sandy is certified by the Three Principles Foundation to teach the three principles as discovered and taught by Sydney Banks. The focus of her work today is with Fortune 100 executives, leadership teams, and working groups, helping them achieve extraordinary results by unleashing the power of the human mind. She works with the consulting group Insight Principles, Inc., and has just released a book co-authored by Ken Manning and Robin Charbit entitled Invisible Power: Insight Principles at Work. Sandy shares her life with her partner, Peter Remick, and together they built their net zero energy home in Northwest Washington. They get out into the awesome Pacific Northwest wilderness as often as they can, sea kayaking as well as hiking and backpacking with their dog. And I'm really excited to hear what you have to say, Sandy. And I just want to mention to everyone, if you're on Google+, you can ask questions in the Q&A box on the right, and we really encourage that. So please keep that in mind. Sandy, thank you so much, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Well, good morning, good evening, good day, wherever you may be in the world. I want to just say up front, I live in a very rural part of Washington, and so my internet service is a little slow. So if you're seeing a delay between my voice and my lips moving, it's probably not your computer, it's probably my internet service. So if I were you, I would just not watch me. I would just listen, because it's a little disconcerting to see my lips moving and nothing coming out of my mouth. So anyway, well, it's great to be here. This is my first webinar with 3PGC. I've seen many of them since they began, but this is my first one, so I'm really honored to be here. My topic is why I still watch, read the same Sydney Banks materials after 35 years. I'm going to talk about that. And what I'd like to do, what I'm hoping happens, is I will talk for a little while, probably 35, 40 minutes. I don't know how long I'll be, but I'd like to just share my take on this, and then open it up to questions, because I'm really hoping to get a dialogue going with you, especially new people, especially the people who never really had a chance to meet Sydney Banks in person or to watch him live. I'd really want to connect with you. So if you can, please hold your questions, and I hope you have questions, and I will stop at about 20 minutes before the end, and take in as many questions as you have. So. Okay. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about me, my history with the principles. I met Sid in 1981, probably before some of you were born. Now, my first meeting with Sid did not go well. It was unfortunately not love at first sight. As a matter of fact, that first encounter, it was a 2-day talk that Sid gave, and I did not come back for the second day. it's, you know, there's a saying, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. Well, the student obviously was not ready. I couldn't be there. I couldn't take it in. I couldn't listen. I just couldn't do it. But fortunately for me, I had a very patient friend and guide, and I still have the same very patient friend and guide named Rita Schufert, and she just hung in there with me. I had so many cups of coffee with Rita, and each time I talked to her, she shared a little bit of what she was seeing listening to Sid Banks. And little bit by little bit, I started to get more comfortable. And 11 months go by. I remember this very well, very, very vividly in my mind. The first talk with Sid was in January of 1981, and then he came to speak again, and Rita invited me to go with her in December of 1981. And this time, I was apparently I was ready. This time, I was deeply, deeply touched by what Sid had said. By what Sid said. Not that I could tell you what I heard specifically, but I had the feeling, like I know many of you have had, where you're in the audience and you're listening and it just rings true to you. You just know you have encountered something that's true. And so that was it. That was, I thought that I had found really what I was looking for. And so now it was a matter of just deepening this very basic sense. It's really all I had in those early days. Back then, there was nothing. There was no 3PGC. there were no books. There was nothing. Sid had not produced any materials, with the exception of some very technically bad cassette tapes that were not widely available. You kind of had to know someone who knew someone who knew someone to get one of these very bad recordings. But that was it. That was it. So all we had was live presentations of Sid, and he didn't speak that often, a couple times a year, you know. Later on, I had the opportunity to spend more time with him, but those early days, there wasn't much. And so it was really those of us listening, just hanging around each other and talking about what we had heard. That was it. That was all we had. So when the first book came out, Sid's first book, which was Second Chance, and it came out in 1983, I was thrilled. I was absolutely thrilled, because now I had something. I had something in writing that I could look at, I could return to, and I did. I literally carried that book around in my purse for the longest time. And I would read it and reread it and reread it. Well, now we have a lot of material, and I think I'm pretty sure I own all of it, and I watch all of it, and I read all of it frequently, even though it's the same material. And I want to tell you why I do that. That's really the purpose of this webinar. And I came up with three reasons that I'm going to talk about today. Now, there's probably many, many more, and my colleagues out there who have been listening and watching and reading the same Sid materials for 35 years or more would have their own set of reasons. But I probably have more if I sat and thought more about it, but I'm going to just talk about 3 of them because I think they're compelling. And obviously, I'm hoping to inspire you to continue to visit these materials. The first reason that I read them is and watch and reread and rewatch is because we are so fortunate to have original materials. The wise have been sharing us their wisdom since the beginning of time, but many of the wise, we have no original material. All we have are the recollections and the interpretations and the translations of the people who may have heard the wise. And then we have recollections and in translations of people who heard from the wise. So, you know, it's rare to be able to have a body of work that's original to the source. So I just love the fact that even though Sid's passed away, I can put in a DVD, or I can listen to a CD, or I can read his book, and I can hear his very words, his words, not somebody's interpretation of his words, his actual words. And there's nothing like hearing the original. There's just nothing like it. And don't get me wrong, I am thrilled that there are many books out now about the principles. I'm thrilled. I wrote a book with my colleagues, Ken Manning and Robin Sharbet, about the principles in the business world, and I'm very proud of the book. But my book and all of the other books out there are not the original, they're translations. And again, that's great. I'm thrilled that we have them, and I'm looking forward to more of them. But they're all translations. And there's something that's missed in a translation, no matter how good it is. I remember when I was in college, I took a world literature course. I don't know why this story came to mind, but I took this world literature course, and one of the books we had to read was Voltaire's Candide. And I had a friend in the class with me, and she was American, but she had been raised in France, and so she spoke fluent French and fluent English. And I happened to glance over at her desk, and she had Voltaire's Candide in French. And I said to her, "Why do you have it in French? This isn't a French class. This is world literature." And she looked at me and she said, "Well, Voltaire was French." I said, "Yeah, I know, but we don't have to read it in French." She said, "Yeah, but he was French. I'm going to read his book in the language that he wrote it in." No matter how good a translation is, she said, it misses things. It misses nuances. It misses subtleties that will be in the original. And she said, and I want to catch that. I want to get it from the source. So I thought of that when I was reflecting on this this webinar, because that's true. That's really true. And we have, fortunately, the originals can look to, and I'm thrilled. So that's one reason. The second reason is every time I read Sid's work or listen to it, I am struck by what I would call his rigor. What I mean by rigor is his definitive certainty, his unwavering message. Now, I think a lot of times when people hear the word rigor, they're surprised to hear that in context of the principles, because I think when people hear the word rigor, they think of definitions that are precise, and the use of certain words that are picked out for a particular reason, a certain kind of intellectual I don't know, box or boundary that we can point to for that we would call rigor. But the principles and Sid's work, it's not that kind of rigor. It's a very different kind of rigor. It's the rigor that comes when you understand something with such depth and such clarity, and you read his work or you listen to his work, and you'll hear that he's always pointing to the same thing. And he's always pointing to a simplicity that it's sometimes hard to see, because we're so accustomed to looking at things in a very different way. We're so accustomed to listening to the specific words. And if Sid said once, he said 1,000 times, don't listen to my words. So the rigor is not in the words. It's not in the choice of words. It's in his message. It's in what he's pointing to. It's in what he's trying to say. But it's very, very specific. One of the things that I teach the principles I use the idea of a paradigm to share the principles, because I think the idea of a paradigm speaks to that rigor. When you have a paradigm is a complete explanation or a complete framework. There's no wiggle room in a paradigm. There's no gray in a paradigm. It's either in the paradigm or not in the paradigm or in a different paradigm. So, and that's how I see Sid's work. He never, there is no gray, there is no maybe, there is no sometimes, there are no exceptions. And his work displays that time and time again. And every time I read it, I see it. Now, it's interesting to me that I have heard over the years, really, people say that the principles are so vague. And it puzzles me when I hear that. The principles are vague. Because in the 25, 28 years that I listened to Sid live before he passed away, I never, ever heard him vague. I never heard him be vague. He was never vague. Now, again, be used to listening the way he was suggesting we listen, but we were listening more, to the words, to the specific words. I can see why people could hear it as vague. But when you are able to grasp his message more fundamentally or more essentially, there's no vague there. there is only a clarity and a consistency that every time I read it, it settles me down. It gives me less to think about, because I stop trying to make it so complicated. When you see things with a rigor and a simplicity, there isn't a lot to say. And so you just want to let it settle. You just want to let it kind of ooze into you, so to speak. You just want it to permeate you, as opposed to trying to go out and grab it and get a hold of it like we're used to. And I know that if you read his materials consistently, if you watch and listen to his materials, you will see that rigor. And it has made me more rigorous in my teaching, because I've been able to avoid certain of the faults that I see people falling into by trying to go into big, long explanations about the principles. I just keep coming back to his simplicity and the absolute direction that he points us in. So that's the second reason to continue to be affected, impressed, touched by the rigor with which he spoke, and how that then guided me in my own teaching. And the third reason, and I think that you probably are all experiencing that. I'm hoping you're all experiencing this, because in fact, I'm fairly confident that you're all experiencing it. Once you start looking in the direction of this understanding, you begin to change. My dear friends and colleagues, Keith Blevins and Valda Monroe, call it an unavoidable evolution. When you begin to look at how the mind really works, you can't help it. You just start to see things differently. And you start to hear things differently. And so even though Sid's materials have not changed in all these years, Second Chance, written in 1983, is still the same book. Because I've changed, I see something different each time I pick it up. You know, I remember a number of years ago, Sid got a different publisher for that book. And the publisher changed the cover. And that's all, just the cover. And Sid used to tell us all the time, with such humor, he used to say, well, you know, a lot of people are coming up to me and saying, Sid, I like the second version of Second Chance so much better than the first version. It's so much clearer. It really, it's really written so much. I'm so glad you made all those changes. And Sid would laugh because he didn't change a thing except the cover. But that's the way it goes. You keep evolving because you keep looking at what's really going on. You keep looking at where your experience is really coming from. You keep seeing that there's more and more and more to you and to life than you ever thought possible. And then you go back and you read something that you know you've read before, but you see it you see something new in it. You see it a little deeper. It makes a little bit more sense. It goes in. You see a relevance that maybe you hadn't seen. So that's that in and of itself. If you didn't need any other reason to keep revisiting Sid materials, that reason alone is worth it, because you'll discover for yourself that something that you thought you knew, maybe even something you thought you had a handle on, you'll go back and you'll read it again, or you'll listen to it again, and you'll hear just a little something you might have missed, or you'll hear a little bit of a twist that you didn't see, or you'll see it, an implication of it that you hadn't realized before. So, and I just for an example, I took out Missing Link. It's probably the book that I read the most, and I looked for an example of what I'm talking about, and I found this one. There's trust me, there's a lot of them, because even though I have literally read this book, I don't know, I really couldn't even imagine when it came out in 1998. I don't know. I've read it hundreds of times. But I remember reading this particular part in the book, and honestly thinking that I had it down. I thought I knew exactly what he meant. And then but I realized over the years, my understanding has changed, deepened. I've seen something new. So I wanted to share that with this one with you. People often speculate how many components. There are no components to thought. Thought is a divine power. It is an element that can never be broken down into smaller segments. It is we human beings that use thought to produce such things as our feelings, moods, and our overall perceptions of life. Now, I got a tremendous amount out of that passage, because I really saw the role of thought. I mean, I had really seen it for myself in my own life, and I could see that that I use thought to create my experience of life. I use it to create my feelings and my perceptions and all that. That realization just threw me into a whole nother stratosphere in terms of my life. But there was a part of this passage that I, for the longest time, just kind of glanced over. And I didn't really see it as very significant. I didn't really quite get it. And so I didn't pay much attention to it, because the rest of the passage was so meaningful to me. But over time, I would read it again, and I started to see that there was something more in this passage that I hadn't seen before. And that's the piece about where he says there are no components to thought. Thought is a divine power. It is an element that can never be broken down into smaller segments. Well, I started to see that I was actually breaking thought down. And I didn't know it. I didn't know it at the time. I thought I was just teaching thought, but I realized that I was actually teaching. I was breaking thought up into a variety of dichotomies: good thinking, bad thinking, wise thinking, not wise thinking, personal thinking, impersonal thinking, good states of mind, bad states of mind. I inadvertently was teaching people and myself to compare and contrast the thinking that I was having, as if that would be helpful. Is this my wisdom, or is this my personal thinking? Am I listening to my deeper knowing, or am I listening to my ego? I mean, I was constantly balancing and asking myself these questions, and it was putting an awful lot on my mind. And I sometimes would get paralyzed because I couldn't figure it out. Was this my wisdom? Was this my ego? I couldn't figure it out. Well, as I read that passage more often, I started to see, whoa, that there are no components to thought. There's no sense in talking to people or talking to myself about, is this good thinking or bad thinking? There's just thought in the moment. That's it. That's it. That's all it is. Don't break it up. It's just thought in the moment. And there'll be another thought in the next moment. And there'll be another thought in the next moment. You can't stop it. It's a principle. There's nothing that you don't break down principles. So that's just an example of one of the many passages in his book that I would hear on his CDs and DVDs that, again, I thought I knew, and it had helped me tremendously. But as I have evolved, or I have grown, or I have deepened in my understanding, I keep seeing more than I missed. The other phenomenon that, and this one really blows me away. And again, if there was just this reason for continuing to revisit Sid's materials, this reason would be enough. I have had the experience, and my guess is you all have as well. I have had the experience of hearing something in Sid's material or reading something in his material that I swear to God was never there before. I swear someone snuck into my house at night and put these words in the book or edited them into his CD while I wasn't looking. Because I would come across it and I would be, what? What did he say? What is that? I would swear on a stack of Bibles that I had never seen it before. That's what happens when you continue to revisit the same materials. You open yourself up to that possibility that you'll see something that's always been in the book, that's always been on the CD, but you were someplace else. You couldn't see it. I couldn't see it. I couldn't hear it. And I have an example of that from Missing Link. And I have lots of examples, but these are just the ones that it's too hard to do an audio, so I did them on the video. When people search for truth, they often look in two directions, at the form and at the formless, creating the idea of a duality in life. In the illusory world of thought, many people believe the inner self is God and the outer self is the body. But I can assure you, the inner self and the outer self are the same thing. Your eyes must see in the singular if you want to find truth. Now, that sentence, your eyes must see the singular if you want to find truth. I read that, I'm going to say a couple of months ago, probably a couple of months ago, and I had one of those moments where, really? This was in the book? I never saw it before. And I think I saw it now because I've just had some of my own insights about my what looked like, until really recently, what looked like my relationship to the principles. It looked like there might be a relationship between me and the principles. And then I realized, wait a minute, there's no relationship. There's just the principles. There's no me. There's no me here. I mean, I know there's a me here. I know I'm talking to you and all of that, but I'm talking at a deeper level. There is just the principles. There's no separation. And when I see that singular, what he talked about, when you see in the singular, again, you stop separating the form from the formless. I hear people say you have to go, you have to teach the formless. Well, the form and the formless are not two different things. They're part of the same. They're part of the same energy. When we see the singular, when we see things as one, it just takes a whole lot of thinking off your mind. Because you don't have to figure it out. You can't figure it out. You cannot figure that out. You have to see for yourself the lack of separation. You have to see for yourself that there's nothing between you and the principles. That's just who you are. So that, and what I just said, that's a translation. Okay, that's my translation. Don't take it from me. My message is, you keep looking and reading Sid's work. What will happen for you, I guarantee it, is that you will see something new. Maybe not every time, because to be honest with you, there are times when I read Sid's books and I listen to his material and I'm daydreaming. I'm distracted. I'm getting nothing. So that happens too, for sure. But there are many times when I've experienced a depth of learning, or I saw something because I now have already had a depth of learning that I never really saw before. And that's what's in the cards for you. If you continue, even if you think there are certain CDs that I've listened to so many times that I can finish its sentences, literally. But still, on those very CDs, I'll, from time to time, hear something brand new. Now, I'm going to stop in just a moment, but I want to say one more thing because I think it's critical. I don't want you to get the idea that Sid's materials are somehow the magic bullet. Because if they were, if I could just hand Missing Link to, my neighbor who I don't get along with, or to every world leader, and they'd read it and be instantly enlightened. I mean, Lord knows I would do it, but it doesn't work that way. We know that. So there's nothing magical about the materials per se. What's magical is your evolution. What's magical is you finding your understanding. And Sid's materials are a guide for you. They're a neon sign guide for you if you see it. But then again, I've missed neon signs before. It's just kind of the nature of being human. We can only see our thinking, and when we're are occupied somewhere else, we're not gonna get everything that's in the materials. But so it's not the materials, it's our willingness to keep going back to the drawing board, to keep open and keep the student mind, and keep looking. And you'll be surprised at, I've been surprised at how much I have gotten from looking at the same materials over and over and over again. Okay, I did it. 20 minutes left for questions. So, Bonnie, how are we doing? I'd love to hear questions, comments, a dialogue.
We don't have any questions yet, but anyone who's on Google+, if you have any, please type them into the Q&A box on the right. And actually, I'm watching on YouTube as well, so if you are on there and you want to post a comment question, I'd be happy to pass it to Sandra. I really, as I was listening to you talk about no difference between the form and the formless, I dropped down into a very quiet place. I'm not sure how else to say it, so it's beautiful. Yeah.
You know, Bonnie, I think that's the point. I think that there's an implication to looking in the direction of these principles. It's not something we do. It's not something we figure out. It's an implication. It happens as a result of this understanding. And that is, you have less and less and less on your mind. And when we have less and less on our mind, we're just more available for life, for listening, for noticing things, for appreciating things. And I was talking to a client yesterday, actually. She's an executive in a corporation. And she said the most interesting thing. She said, I am so busy. She said, I'm busier than I've ever been, but I have no stress. And I feel great. And I said to her, well, you know, busyness minus stress is productivity. And being productive feels good. And she said, you know, you're right. I have been more productive. I don't think I've ever been as productive. And we talked about that so much of her thinking had been on what was stressing her out. You know, had been her stressful thinking. And that had fallen away, and she was a little bit in awe of it, because she couldn't put her finger on anything she was doing differently. She kept saying, now, Sandy, I'm telling you, normally having this much work I would be going crazy. And she said, and my kids, you know, it's summer. I got camp camp and I got this thing, I got that thing. She says, normally I would just be spinning. And it's all happening. It's all as busy, if not busier. This is a very busy time for her business. And I don't feel any stress. She was just in awe of it. And again, she wasn't meditating. She wasn't clearing her mind. She wasn't being mindful. She wasn't doing anything. She just realized how her mind worked. And she just saw for herself that there was nothing but thought. And it took volumes off her mind. And so she got to be productive and enjoy it. And that, again, that's what's in the cards for us when we look where Sid was pointing.
Greg is asking, could you talk about a major insight you've had that you didn't notice until something else made it obvious? Something you stopped doing and didn't realize it, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like me to reread that?
Wow. No, that's a great question. Well, I always knew, I should say always, once I started to have insights about the principles, I could see them as principles. I could see the truth of them. I didn't question the truth of them. But what I didn't realize was I had a whole series of exceptions to those principles that I just didn't know I had. These exceptions did not look like thought to me. And when I started to have insights about the principles as a paradigm, there's something about seeing the principles as a paradigm did something for me. Because, like I said, a paradigm is a line in the sand. It either is or it isn't. And I had to admit that if the principles are true, and I knew they were true, then all feeling had to come from thought. All experience had to come from thought. There was no exception. It was a paradigm. It's like, you can't have a flat earth and a round earth at the same time. You just can't. That's the nature of a paradigm. So either the principles were true, either all feeling and all experience came from thought, or it didn't. Both couldn't be true. And I started to see a lot of the exceptions. That the one that comes to mind is one of my personal favorites is I thought fairness was a real thing. I thought I didn't see that fairness was thinking, fairness was thought. I didn't see it. I thought it was the truth. Of course, it was Sandy's version of fairness. That never really bothered me. But I figured my version of fairness was the truth. And one day I was tied up in a knot about something that I thought was unfair. And realized, wait a minute, where is this feeling coming from? And I tried to justify it because fairness to me was in a category, a very special category of not something else other than thought. But I couldn't go there. And I went, oh my God, fairness is thought. Oh my God. This feeling, this tied up in knots, is coming from your thinking. Well, that happened like, a year ago. So for all those other years that I have been listening to learning this, understanding, looking at this, I didn't see fairness as a thought. And then there it was. And this is really over the last a couple of years, there's just been something about seeing how the mind actually works from the inside out, and how conversely it can't work, because that's the nature of a paradigm. It works only one way. Well, if it can only work one way, it can't work the other way. So it can't be that fairness was something more than thought. It can't work. So I just thought it was right there in front of my face, now I don't want to say that I've never gone into a little snit about some lack of fairness. It still happens to me, but it doesn't go anywhere. It gets no momentum. There's no traction, because I see that this knot in my stomach can only be coming from one place, from thought in the moment. That's it. So that's one example, but and I think I will go to my grave under the illusion that certain other things are not thought, because I seem to keep checking them off the list. I'm sure there's plenty more to check off.
I totally relate to that. We have a comment and a question. Verena is saying, it's wonderful to listen to your story. It leaves me with a calm feeling of being at the right place at the right time. And Michael has a question. He is asking, could you please talk about the statement, there's information in a feeling, please?
I don't think this is somebody else's statement. I don't believe I said that. Do you remember me saying that? I don't think so. So information in a feeling. Well, to me, the information in the feeling is that it's because feeling can only come from thought. The feeling, no matter what it is letting me know that I'm experiencing thought in the moment. And that's extremely helpful. And I mean, it's an amazing insight to have. So I relish my feelings. All of them, the good, the bad, the ugly. I love my feelings. Because they are my indicator, my guide as to what's happening within. They are not information about what's happening out there in the world. That's what I used to think. It's what a lot of people think, that I'm feeling what's happening out in the world. or I'm feeling what somebody else said. But actually, if you look at it, if you really look at it, what you're feeling is thought in the moment. And that design of the human system, the fact that we are designed that way, to feel our thinking, to experience our thinking, to experience thought in the moment, the fact that we are designed that way is a miracle. It's pointing to the intelligence of the system. Because if you can imagine, if the human mind were designed to feel our thinking, but to feel what was going on in the outside world or what somebody else had just said, we wouldn't get out of bed in the morning. Life would be so frightening. But the mind was designed perfectly with a depth of intelligence and a direct conduit. In fact, it's not even a conduit. We are that intelligence. And the design is so perfect that if we even get a little glimmer of it in the moment, we will have a great life. If you get an even deeper glimmer of it, you'll find everything you're looking for.
And Greg, from his question earlier, Greg just said, great example, thanks. And so we are almost at the top of the hour. Is there anything that you'd like to say to wrap things up? Or
wow, I'm happy to dialogue with anybody. If you can refer them to my email, and I'm happy if a question comes up later and somebody would like to ask me, feel free. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that come up. But it's been a real pleasure, Bonnie. I really do hope that what I said inspired people, either who don't have SIDS materials, to purchase some or get some from, or borrow some from other people. And those of you who have his materials, I really do hope my webinar inspires you to revisit them and to continue to revisit them.
yeah, thank you so much. This was a wonderful discussion. I really, really, really felt what you were saying. So just to wrap up, thank you so much. And I want to remind everyone that the next 3PGC conference is coming up. It's in the Los Angeles area, October 27th through the 30th. The link is underneath the YouTube video. It's 3principlesconference.org. 3 is spelled out. And something to keep in mind, there's an early bird discount of $50 off the ticketed price through July 15th. Our next 3PGC webinar is Thursday, July 14th with Gabriella Maldonado, and Tuesday, July 26th with Linda Ramos. So I hope you can all make it then, and thank you all for joining us.